Hello, 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 guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing another episode of our mod spotlights, where we take a look at some of the recent mods that the community has been making for Planet Zoo. And today we'll be starting off with our first non-animal. So this has replaced the statues of the red panda and the giant panda in the Southeast Asia theme. So we've got our first eagles, our first birds. So here we can see, or flying birds, we can see a golden eagle and a bald eagle. We'll start off with a little bit of information about the golden eagle. So the golden eagle is known as a whole Arctic species, which means they are found pretty much most of the northern hemisphere. They're found in North America, they're found in North Africa, they are found in Europe and Asia. And they tend to have a big territory, about 20 to 30 square kilometers, and they pretty much hunt whatever they can get their talons on. They've been known to kill deer, livestock, pretty much anything they can. They tend to raise about 1 young per year and can have 15 young over their lifetime. They are also protected in most of their range, but they have problems with dealing with pesticides, competition from farmers, and yeah, people, obviously farmers don't want them. They just suffer from habitat loss as well. That covers most species. But yeah, they're a very interesting bird, and it's really cool to finally see them in game. The only problem really is that they don't fly. This is a statue. I'd really like to see flying birds in Planet Zoo someday. And then we'll be moving on to bald eagle. Bald eagles are quite similar to golden eagles in a lot of ways, but they're found only in America. They tend to be, of course, the symbol of freedom for America. They were actually at risk of extinction, but early in history, like 1700s, they were protected. Well, 1940 it was. And their populations have been going up since, even though DDT, which is a pesticide, makes their shells, their egg shells, weaker, so that can really affect the birth rates of these eagles. So that people are going to be really careful what kind of pesticides they use. They're very generous, but they do really prefer eating fish. They like to hover over waterways and snatch fish. And they're probably one of the most well-studied American birds, with over 2,000 articles from various sources and about their management and their biology. And yeah, they have well protected, but there's problems like DDT and such that could really impact their populations, so people got to be really careful about things like that. So now we're going to move on to our first animal. Here we have got Lion Remake by not Julius Ottoni, that's a different artist. I'm meaning Julia Lacerda, who is a paleo artist that's quite famous for doing lots of if you've seen him on PBS Eons and other... He's quite a famous paleo artist, but he's thrown his hat into the ring with Planet Zoo modding, and we can see one of his lion remakes. We can see here is the female. It's been really desaturated. And just some little touches up, and then we can see the male here. Oh, that's the fence. That's not the male. Here's the male. We can see that the colours have just been painted slightly better. Some slight face edits that just make them look a little better. Looks quite nice. This might be one of the few mods I might actually keep. But anyway, I think let's get a good look at that. That looks quite nice. Just going to give it a look. Oh. We're going to make... Look at him. What a mad lad. Mad lad. Okay, so now we'll be moving on to the next species. We have got the red wolf. Now, red wolves have a very complicated history. They're believed to be a subspecies of grey wolf. They're eventually their own species called the red wolf. But recent genetic studies show that they were probably a population of hybrids that are believed to be about 40% wolf and 60% coyote. So a lot of people have been wondering whether they should be protected as an endangered species, even though they're not a pure wolf or poor coyote. They tend to be like a hybrid population. Though a lot of people argue they should still be protected because they are unique in terms of evolution. You can learn a lot about them. So they're critically endangered now. There's only, I believe, only a few hundred, if that, living in both in captivity and in the wild. I'm not sure the exact number, but they're critically endangered. They range in the southeastern United States, from Florida up to the Great Lakes, Missouri and Texas. And they've been mostly hunted in the wild, of course, like most other wolves, as competition for livestock. And they have been introduced in some areas and have been prolifically captive bred. And yeah, they're quite a cool species. These guys replace the female grey wolf because they are smaller than other wolf subspecies or species. They're very, very nice looking. You can see the nice red that looks on it. I think this was by Nicholas Lion Rider as well. Did a very good job with the red wolves. I have a personal thing for red wolves. I think they look really nice. So yeah, I'm really happy to see this in game. So now we will be moving to the Alpine Ibex, also done by Giulio Lacerda. Sorry, I got you confused with Giulio Cittoni. To be fair, it's a pretty easy mistake. Here we've got the Alpine Ibex, which is also known as just the Ibex, as a wild goat that's found in the European Alps. You can see we got this big male here with his big horns. Very wonderful looking. They can get up to about 40 inches tall or 101 centimeters at the withers or the shoulders, and a body length of 171 centimeters or 67 inches, and weigh up to 117 kilos in big males, which is pretty big. That's over 100 kilos. Very nice looking model so far. They're very excellent climbers. They like to hang out in mountain ranges. Very, very good climbers, like most goats. And they use these big horns to joust with each other. The right to breed, because they live in small herds where they compete for, obviously, mating rights. They are found throughout France, Italy, Switzerland, Bolivia, Austria, and were poached heavily in the 16th century and became extinct in Switzerland and Germany. But the numbers have been rebounding because of protection, and they are now considered least concerned by the IUCN. So that's pretty cool. Very nice looking animal. There's a male here. Have a look at the female. Let's see, she's not quite as big and impressive as the male, but still a nice looking lady. She's got her own horns. She's having a dig. Look at these little babies. Look at you. A little fluffy boy. Adorable. Absolutely adorable. So now we'll be moving on to the Waipadi, or the elk. Let's just grab it over here. So here we've got the elk. Here's a nice male that we got here. So there's a little bit of confusion, sometimes called the Waipadi, because in Eurasia they call moose elk. So this is referring to the Waipadi, the one from America. They're found in North America and Northeast Asia. And they're very famous for these big antlers and very good hunting as well. They have been introduced to places like Argentina and New Zealand for hunting. And they can spread a lot of diseases, of course, to livestock, so a lot of people are worried about them. They are found, there's a bunch of different subspecies, like the Roosevelt elk, mountain elk, eastern elk, and there's some in Asia as well, the Itali elk, and the Tishan Wapari. Though recent DNA suggests there's no more than 3 or 4 elk subspecies, which some have been lumped. And obviously they're quite big. They get up to about 1.3 meters tall at the withers and 6'9" or 2.1 meters from nose to tail. Bulls get to about 40% larger than cows on average, with these big antlers to help display, of course. So they live in single-sex groups most of the year, but during the mating period, or rut, they will compete with other males for their own females to use for breeding. And they usually have a calf every year, and they tend to hang out in herds so they don't get attacked by, of course, wolves and other predators. They tend to feed on whatever they can find. They're primarily grazers, so that avoids competition with moose. So they tend to graze whatever they can find in their areas, and they are very important to a lot of cultures, especially like the Native Americans who hunted them for food, and Neolithic cultures for eating them in the Bronze Age. They taste very good too. They are very good venison, as I've had. Very nice meat. And yeah, very interesting looking. We can see the male here. He's quite big and impressive. This was made by Julio again. Not Julio Lacerda. And you can see he made this off the sable elk. This one doesn't look so extra fluffy. It's really nice. Then we can see the female here. It looks nice and dainty. That looks really good. And we can see a child. A child. I believe it's called a calf because it's the size difference. Usually bigger deer are called calves and smaller ones are fawns. You can see it looks quite nice here. Real cutie. I like you. I like you a lot. Very, very cute. So now let's move over to the next one. Let's see what else we've got. We have got the greater kudu. So we can see here, this is the female. So greater kudu are a woodland antelope found in eastern and southern Africa. With, despite being widespread, they are sparsely populated and can be really damaged. Population can be damaged by habitat destruction and intense poaching. And they're quite famous for being really big. They can get up to about 270 kilos, the big bulls, with a maximum of 315, and stand to about 160 centimeters tall at the shoulder. The females are a little bit smaller though, and there's a few subspecies found across Africa. They range from Tanzania, Kenya, Angola, Namibia, the Congo, pretty much all sub-Saharan Africa, and like to hang out in woodlands. And they come out in the afternoon and early morning to collect food and stuff, just to avoid the heat of the day. They're preyed on by lions, spotted by hyenas, and wild dogs. And cheetahs and leopards will hunt younger kudu. They live up to 8 years in the wild and up to 23 in captivity. But they are active all day since they don't have any worries about heat and such. They are not territorial, and they live in herds that just range around a certain area, about 4 square kilometers. And they reach about sexual maturity between 1 and 3 years. And their mating season occurs at the end of the rainy season. And they have big rituals where males fight for females. And gestation takes about 8 months. And calving is generally between February and March, where the grass is the biggest and the most grown, most overgrowth. Good food for the mother and the young calf. And they are not listed as endangered yet, but they could be, because they are very sensible to habitat loss and of course poaching, which is a rampant problem in Africa. But yeah, they're very nice model here. We can see the female. Let's have a look at the calf. Little baby. Look at him with his silly ears. He jump around. So cute, so small. And we can see a big male here with his big horns. Very impressive looking animal. This one is done by Frank Lanka, or however you pronounce that. They did a very good job with this animal. So now, let me just go check. Cool. Making sure we're getting good recording. So now we have got a very cool species. We have got the Takun. So Takun are a species goat. They don't look like goats. They look more like bison than goats, but believe it or not, they are goats. They're a species of goat that live in the Himalayas. There are 4 subspecies. I believe these guys might be the golden Takun, which is Bucodus taxicolor bufoldi. I believe that's the subspecies. So they're the largest and stockiest of the goats, and they are related to like muskox. They are very charismatic for these big bison-like looks. Short heads, big bulky bodies, and very interesting. They get to about Their horns get to about 30 centimeters long, but they can grow up to 64 centimeters in length. These big bulls have long, shaggy coats to obviously protect from the cold of the Himalayas. They in height they stand about 140 centimeters or 1.4 meters at the shoulder, and get to about 220 centimeters in head and body length. They get up to about 300 to 350 kilos. Then the males and females are likely to get to 300. There are some even bigger ones, so the large captive Takun known as 322 kilos and being a large female. And they can get up to even 600 kilos in some cases, if they're taken care of while in captivity. Of course, they are found in the forest valleys and rocky alpine zones in the Himalayas. That's the habitat. They live in family groups of up to about 20 individuals, even though older males kind of do their own thing. In the summer, they can gather in huge herds, though, to obviously take advantage of the new growth and to mate. They are preyed upon by animals like Asiatic black bears and leopards, seldomly tigers, grey wolves, snow leopards, and dholes. And they are also at risk of, anecdotally that is, but they have been confirmed to be hunted by snow leopards. And they are considered endangered by China standards and vulnerable per the IUCN because they have been overhunted and there's rampant destruction of their habitat. Though there have been protections to help their populations grow, and they are doing at least okay now. They're not at serious risk of extinction, but they are protected and they're very nice looking. This one was also done by, I believe, I'm not sure. I'm not sure who did this Takun, but it's a very nice looking animal. Really like seeing these animals. They're more low key. I'm really happy they're getting representation in the game. Quite like them. These replace the black wildebeest, of course. And I forgot to mention that these guys replaced the Nyala. No, these guys replaced the Nyala. Okay, so now I'll be moving on to the Cougar. So we all know the Cougar. They like to prey on young men. No, they don't. That's the other type of cougar. These guys are large felids that are native to the Americas. There are two subspecies. There's the North American and the South American. And believe it or not, the South American is the descendant of the North American because they used to live in America, then they went extinct in America, and there was a small population that survived in South America, then they migrated back into North America. So that's pretty cool. They are the second heaviest cat in the New World after the jaguar. They are pretty secretive, but they also are pretty open to hunting whatever times. They're very, very adaptable. And they hunt whatever they can. They can hunt killed grizzly bears. They also get American alligators and grey wolves. They have to defend themselves about that. Have to be very careful. And yeah, there's a lot of different species described as a bit lumped. They get up to about 90 centimeters tall at the shoulder, and adult males can get to 2.4 meters long from nose to tail tip, and females average 2.05, so a little over 2 meters. There's a lot of range. It depends on their population. Some populations are bigger than small than others. And they have these very simple coloured coats to help them blend into the environment. There's even an image I saw on Twitter of a cougar being very well hidden in a California area. So they're very, very successful species living in pretty much almost any habitat they can fit into. They've been found in the northern Yukon and Canada to the Andes, and they were escapaded from the North America range, especially around eastern North America, like in Florida. But there's believed to be populations surviving in Florida, just because of human hunting. And they pretty much hunt whatever they can. And they do suffer from competition from black bears and grey wolves and stuff, but they have to sometimes compete with them. Pretty much eat whatever they can. Mule deer, whitetails, bull moose have been taken sometimes. Bighorn sheep, Dall sheep, mountain goats, coyotes, badgers, pronghorn, whatever they can get their claws on. And you can see they have these very, very, very cute cubs. Let's see if we can have a look at them. Look at you, look at you, look at you, look at you. Very, very adorable. They got these little spots here. They are mostly solitary, but they have been noticed that they've been a little bit more communal than we think. Like once in South America, there have been observations where them when one makes a kill, they'll often let others come and join the kill, and they become like more friendly to each other around a kill, which is pretty cool. There are obviously threats, include habitat loss, habitat fragmentation, because this isolates different populations from each other, which can lead to inbreeding. That was quite cute. Swipe them up. And obviously due to poaching, and by also heavy traffic, which can hit cougars and people, just farmers, just hunting them. And yeah, the conservation status, they're considered least concern by the ICU Red List, but some populations have been classed as critically endangered and endangered. So people have been generally, the populations have been stable at least, just because of the protections that have been placed on them by the government. So it's quite good they're doing okay. Looks like they're having a bit of a fight there. I'd have to get rid of you for a... So we are. Luckily we just saw them before that happened. I'll just have to get rid of some of these guys so we don't have any issues. Well, that's alright, we're only going to show these off. And now we have got the Saiga antelope, which are criminally underrated. I believe this one was also made by Julio. Yep, Julio Yosoda. And these guys are critically endangered, and they're found across the Eurasian steppe from the Carpathian Mountains to the Caucasus and the Mongolia. They occurred in the Pleistocene all over North America and the British Isles, but their population and range has shrunk due to the end of the last glacial maximum and human hunting. So they're very, very at risk from diseases and such because they have such a restricted range. They get to up to about 70 kilos. And they can typically get to 440 centimeters long. And they're very famous for having this very weird, big, bulbous nose. It almost looks like a pseudo-trunk. They can be found in like super large herds, very large herds, of the thousands, across deserts, grasslands, and steppes. And they eat whatever plants they can find. The winter herds can be up to 5 to 50 females. In the springtime, the mothers will give birth. A lot of twins. And have been known to migrate a lot across these steppes. And juveniles can be taken by foxes, steppe eagles, golden eagles, and ravens. So over their history from the 14th to the 20th century, they have been hunted mercilessly by hunters, of course. So their population's really gone down. And most recently, the populations have been hit hard by diseases. So at least they're kind of grown up. Like in 2015, there was more than 120,000 Saigas that were confirmed dead because of, which was about a third of the population at the time, because of diseases. And yeah, obviously the big major threats to them is hunting, disease. They're very wide-ranging species because of the habitat. So habitat fragmentation is a big issue for them. Climate variability, because they rely on these cool steppes. When climate changes, they restrict, so there's less habitat for them. So obviously climate change is a big issue, and these big diseases are a big issue for them as well. So yeah, we've got that covered, and now we have got to look at the spectacled bear. Well, these guys replaced the male springbok, and these guys replaced the Bengal tiger. So here we have got the spectacled bear, which are the closest living relative to the extinct American short-faced bear. So these spectacled bears, or also known as the Andean bears, are found in the Andes and all over South America. And the largest land carnivore in there. Though they are almost like pandas, and they pretty much just eat plants, Very interesting. They get to about 100 to 200 kilos in big males, and females can weigh between 35 and 85 kilos. They get up to 2 meters long, though most mature males measure less than 150. On average, males weigh 115 kilos. These really big ones get up to 200. And some of the extinct species of these guys, the extinct short-faced bears, a lot more carnivorous than these modern spectacle bears, with being sort of like pandas and being a lot more herbivorous. They're found across Panama, Ecuador, Bolivia, and Argentina. And though their population, of course, used to be a lot bigger before human hunting, they can be found up to elevations up to 1,000 meters. And they're found in these cloud forests and such. They have an average home range of about 23 kilometers during the wet season and 27 during the dry season. Just a little bit more so they can find food. And it really depends on the availability of food to them, how much they'll range. You have to be careful of cougars and such. And around April or June, that's when they become very amorous and start mating, and they usually give birth in the dry season between December and February. The gestation lasts about between 5 and 8 months. And 1 or 3 cubs may be born that weigh about 330 grams. So about this size, which makes them very, very cute. We'll have a look at the little baby now. Look at him, he's in the adorbs. So yeah, Andean bears, or spectacle bears, have a very big threat to them is poaching and habitat loss. And poaching because they make good trophies, the pet trade, natural products, or bear bile can be an issue with a lot of bears. And yeah, there have been a lot of protection tried to put in place to protect them, which has been quite successful. Their populations have been stable, so that's quite good. We don't need less spectacle bears in the world, because the next few species most of them are extinct, except the lucky last one. So yeah, very nice. We can have a look at this male here, I think. Very nice looking. These guys replace the Himalayan brown bear. And look very, very nice. Look at him just chilling. So we got the next animal here. We have got the Eurasian wild horse, or the tarpan. Right here. So these guys were quite common and became extinct around the early 19th century. And they've quite been obviously lived across Eurasia. They when the Pleistocene, they were quite common as well, and there's like cave paintings of these guys. They're believed to be the ancestors of modern horses, the domestic horses, not related to Pavlovsky horses though. And yeah, they were hunted pretty much to extinction in the 19th century. And they're quite famous for being all sorts of different colours. All sorts of different variation. People have been hunting horses though since the Paleolithic, so a lot of this would have been historic times. They were very important protein as well, so hunting these horses would have made really good food. By the 1880s also, they've been at risk as hybridization with modern horses, domestic horses. So by 1880, most of these tarpans would have been wild hybrids. And in 1879, the last one was killed. And there's been dubious sightings against in the late 18th century, like 1890. And the last captive taipan died in a Russian zoo in 1909. So there was also been attempts to breed them back by Herr Heck, who was in the war, the Second World War, under Hitler, who tried to breed back the tarpan and the aurochs and created the Heck cattle and the Heck horse, which resembled the tarpan, but not really. So these guys are obviously extinct, and it's very sad to see they're extinct, though potential de-extinction could happen in the future. But yeah, these look very nice. I really like these models. So you can see I believe this is different ones, and we can see a foal here. Look very cute. I think these guys are adorbs. So yeah, we're almost at the end, boys and girls. So next we have got Tetra Mireks. So Tetra Mireks is a species of pronghorn. So pronghorns are very interesting because they're not related to deers and such. They're actually more closely related to giraffes. They're an extinct, almost extinct group. The only living group today is the pronghorn, the living genera. But even during the Ice Age, there were a lot more varied species with different horn shapes like these guys. They were very prolific at the end of the Ice Age. They kind of replaced deer. They were much like deer. Because America was isolated a lot from other places, so they kind of took the role of deer. And there's a lot of variation within these groups. So you can see there's a variation within their horns. Very nice looking animals. Very cool to see them. Became extinct at the end of the Ice Age with climate change and human hunting, along with the other megafauna. So yeah, very nice looking. It doesn't change the females much, but here we've got the males here. And now, speaking of megafauna, we have got one of my favorite megafauna. We have got Bison latifrons, or the giant or longhorn bison. So these are very famous bison that lived in North America during the Pleistocene. They were the largest and heaviest bison, and potentially the heaviest bovid. And they became extinct again, along with most of the megafauna in the late, about 12,000 years ago. The known dimension of these guys, they got to about twice the size of modern bison, and making them one of the largest ruminants. They were about nearly 5 meters in length and stood about 2 meters and 2.3 meters, or 7.5 feet, to 8 feet 2 at the shoulder, or 2.5 meters. So they estimated weight between 1.2 to 2 whole tons. They were probably the largest ruminant ever. You don't see that size in game in someone's ruminant vehicle, but that's alright. They were only rivaled today by the modern giraffe and the longhorn bison. They evolved in the Americas, mid-continent America, so that in the United States. And there's actually been some studies that show they actually were more like forest bison and gaur, and like these forested habitats. They prefer these forest habitats to live in, versus the steppe bison or the modern bison that's preferred to live in more open plains. And they lived in small herds within these woodlands and such, and would have to deal with, obviously, saber-toothed cats, short-faced bears, dire wolves, these kind of animals. And they became extinct, obviously, at the end of the last Ice Age, and it's very sad to see them go. But we still have modern bison, which almost went extinct much recently, too. There was only 1,000 left, and now we've got a population of, even though some of them are hybrids, of over 500,000 that we can obviously. Before that, there were populations of up to 60 million, so hopefully we can get to a slimmer of that former glory sometime in the future. So yeah, very nice animal. And last but not least, we have the harbour seal that was made by a lion rider that's coming up here. And look at it, it can dive. It's such a weird mod, but it works surprisingly well, even though look at that weird face. We can see the harbour seal, or sometimes just called the common seal. It's a pinniped found across the Northern Hemisphere, the Northern Atlantic, Northern Pacific, the Baltic, and the North Seas. Their bulbul population is believed to be about 500,000, but certain subspecies and populations are threatened. And yeah, they are found in... They can swim up to large rivers and like to hunt fish like shad and salmon. They like to hang out around resting sites around rugged rocky coasts in New England and wherever they can. Just rocky shores they like. They like to hang out in bays and intertidal areas and estuaries where they can find many different fish like herring, mackerel, cod, whatever fish they can find. And they're solitary, but when they come out onto the beach, they can become very gregarious when they're breeding. They usually don't venture very much more than 20 kilometers offshore. They tend to be very coastal species. They give birth to pups every year on the shore, and they obviously wean them and milk them until they obviously get big enough to survive on their own. They also spend a lot of their time on the shore when they're molting. So kind of like they breed and then they molt and then they head back to the river, the ocean. So yeah, there's many different populations and they are doing quite well, even though obviously pollution and climate change could severely affect that because they do like cold adapted areas. But yeah, these are very interesting looking mod, I do say so myself. Sitting around, moving around. You can see these are based on the female Formosan black bear. And even though they are floating in mid-air and look kind of weird, considering what kind of mod this is, it works surprisingly well, in my opinion. So yeah, really cool. I believe they managed to, Nicholas Lionrider, who made this, managed to get to dive, but that was just a video, he hasn't released that quite yet. And an update. Well, that's quite cool, so yeah, you can see him running. They're gonna have a fight. Change the sounds, even though it's weird to see them levitating. So, yeah, I believe that ends our video for today. Really nice going through all these mods. So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys like and subscribe as always, and bye bye.